most of you have thought of various different career options, and especially medicine being one of them. Well, we are here to talk about careers beyond medicine. So let's look at what is it that you can think of beyond medicine, because certainly these are traditionally very popular disciplines. Engineering, medicine, etc. are very, very popular. And there's always this feeling that, okay, if we do join a medical profession, or if we become an engineer, then our job prospects are really good. Surely they're good. But then today, I think we're living in a day and age where we can also look beyond some of these traditional career options. And one such career option that we are looking at today is psychology. So psychology is what I have been teaching for almost 20 years now. I have done research and teaching in psychology for the last almost 20 years now. So keeping all my experience in mind, I would like to discuss some of the career prospects that psychology has to offer. As a discipline, we will look at what exactly it does, and then subsequently we'll also look at various different areas in psychology that you can specialize in and make a career for yourself. So to begin with, firstly, when you say psychology, I'm sure we've all used this word psychology multiple times, in our more than, at least once in a day, perhaps we think of this word or maybe use this word in the context of the mind or in the context of behavior, etc. So I'm sure we all by now already know that it is a discipline which talks about mind and behavior, and how that impacts our interpersonal relationships, how that has an impact on the way we look at life in general, etc. So this is something that psychology is best understood as when it comes to the discipline. But technically speaking, exactly what does it do? So we also need to understand what psychology does in reality, or as a science, exactly what it does. So if you look at it from the point of view of an established discipline, it studies the intersection of two critical relationships. Now, what are these two critical relationships? One is the relationship between the brain and behavior. Now, as we all know that brain is such an important organ, and it is responsible for a variety of thoughts, emotions, perceptions, all those kinds of things that we normally use in a day-to-day setting. So this relationship between the brain and behavior is very, very significant, because whatever we think or whatever we feel finally also translates into our behavior. So our thoughts do manifest in the form of our behavior. So essentially, one of the things that we try and understand is this relationship between the brain and the behavior. And the second aspect of this intersection is between the environment and behavior. So basically, we are looking at how environment, which means the environment that we are part of, right from the time we are born, we are part of a certain environment. Initially, we start with a family environment, and then as we grow older, we also move out of the family environment and also become part of various different environments, like our social environment, like friends, colleagues, your batchmates, all these are different kinds of environments. You become part of these environments. So how your behavior translates in a situation where you are no longer in the family environment, and if you're with your friends, how does your behavior finally manifest? So this relationship between the environment and behavior is another relationship, very critical relationship that psychologists study. So essentially, these are primarily the two most critical relationships that we study, between the brain and behavior, between the environment and behavior. So keeping this, perhaps you could hold on to this particular thought of what is it that the psychologist studies. So keeping these two critical relationships in mind, let's look at some of the specializations or areas within psychology that you can actually opt for as a future career, starting with some of the established specializations. Now, psychology as a discipline is quite young in that sense. The reason why I'm saying young, even though it first became a full-fledged discipline sometime in the late 19th century, but I'm still calling it young because a lot of developments happened in the late 20th century, and most of the the applications that we see in psychology came up as a result of various different advancements in technology. Like, for example, studying the brain. was not possible when technology was not there. So once technology became part and parcel of our lives, it became very easy for us to also study the workings of the brain. So in that sense, it is quite young as a discipline. So sometime around the 1970s, when we started first having the scanning technologies, that is when psychology actually grew as a discipline, and the understanding of the brain flourished as a result of the technologies that became handy. And as a result of that, we could also see the live brain. Till then, we were not able to see a live brain. Till then, whatever our understanding was based on the dead brain. So keeping all those things in mind, let's look at what are the different specializations that got established. And first, we look at the more established ones, which means which now are offered in various different universities as different specializations in psychology. Then we look at some of the new ones, which are upcoming and which have now been established in the last 15, 20 years. So some of the established specializations are clinical psychology to begin with. Now, this is one branch of psychology where you study the abnormal aspects of the brain, which means if somebody behaves in a certain way, which seems to be abnormal to us, which seems like, it looks like there is some kind of a severe disturbance, then those are the aspects which are studied by clinical psychologists. So essentially, they are trying to diagnose disorders and classify certain disorders. And based on those classifications and diagnosis, they may also do some kind of interventions. So essentially, looking at how certain aspects of the brain which seem to not function normally anymore, that is the domain of a clinical psychologist. So essentially, they study the abnormal aspects of the brain. So that is what the clinical psychologist does. Next is the counseling psychology as a specialization. Now, this particular specialization is something that works in coordination with clinical psychology, because many times a clinical psychologist may just want to diagnose the problem and may also want to intervene, but may not necessarily be very specialized when it comes to intervention. So a clinical psychologist is somebody who, a counseling psychologist is somebody who gets into counseling, therapy, etc., and does some kind of intervention. And clinical psychologists also do that. But like I said, for them, sometimes it becomes more imperative to diagnose the problem. Whereas in counseling psychology, they get into also intervention. So basically, they are looking at how to help the person come out of that particular situation. So that is what counseling psychology is all about. And it may not necessarily be related to any severe mental disturbance or any abnormalities. Even day-to-day issues that we all grapple with many times, sometimes we are unable to resolve some of these day-to-day issues. And we might just want to visit a counselor who's a trained person in psychology. And we might just want to resolve some of those day-to-day issues as well. So counseling psychology deals with our day-to-day issues, and throughout our life. It need not necessarily be boxed into a certain lifespan. It can be throughout the lifespan. Any time of our life we experience certain difficulties, we could approach a counselor for getting some kind of guidance. So that is counseling psychology. Then the other specialization, which is more established, is developmental psychology. Now here, essentially, the entire focus is on lifespan development, which means right from the time a child is born till he matures into an adult, the different phases or the different stages of life that one goes through, which all of us have also gone through, and the different issues that may arise as a result of going through various different lifespans. So issues which perhaps are not necessarily physiological, but mainly psychological in nature. So for example, if a child does not meet his milestones, for example, a child is expected to walk at a certain age, speak at a certain age. If that does not happen, we are also checking, is there some kind of a psychological issue because of which the child is unable to speak or has difficulty in walking? So those are things which are checked by the developmental psychologist. Then comes educational psychology. Now, education is part and parcel of our lives. We continue to educate ourselves no matter what our age. So when you say educational psychology, it is not necessarily restricted only to school, but of course it starts with school. So what happens in school, the different problems that children might face at school, interactions that they have with the teacher, or interpersonal relationships in a classroom environment, and issues related to that. Then also certain kinds of certain challenges that the child might face, for example, some kind of language related challenges, or I'm sure we've heard of, issues like autism spectrum disorder and things like that, which essentially deal with some kind of language related issues and some kind of challenges related to usage of language, and how an educational psychologist helps in order to get better, in order for how they train the child to get better and use the capacities that they have in order to make their lives better. So educational psychologists essentially deal with any problem related to an educational setting. And like I said, it may not necessarily be only restricted to the school setting. It can even be in a university setting, a college setting, etc. Education psychologists also work in formulation of policies, because education is such an important part of our life, and we must have really good policies in place so that people can, make most of those policies and get education the way they are supposed to. So that is why they also become part of a team of people who also frame policies. So that is what the educational psychologists do. Then we have the other discipline, which is really established, industrial and organizational psychology. Now, as the name very clearly suggests, somebody who's trained in this area essentially deals with any issue related to the organizational setting. For example, any interpersonal relationship issues that the workers might have or the employees might have with their employers, or some kind of a stress or some kind of conflict that arises in a work situation. Those are the issues which are handled by somebody who is trained in organizational psychology. Sometimes even some very severe problems, like, for example, if workers decide to go on strike, and sometimes the organizational psychologist may also play the role of a mediator and help in even resolving those kinds of very severe conflicts as well. So those are aspects which are studied by somebody who's trained in organizational psychology. So this is about the most established specializations. And what I meant, like I said, is that when I say established specializations, these are areas in which most of the renowned universities, whether in India or abroad, offer a degree program, an undergraduate degree program, as well as a postgraduate degree program, as well as a PhD program. And there's a lot of research that is happening, and it continues to grow and evolve as disciplines. So these 5 disciplines have become very well established throughout the world. So there will be no dearth of universities offering these programs in any of the universities which offer a psychology program. So that is why we are calling them the established specializations. Then we have some new specializations which have come up in the past few years, and have developed from some of them have actually developed from the existing established specializations, and they have branched out and become another area of specialization. And today we also see that many universities are offering these specializations. So let's look at some of them. First is cognitive psychology. Now, this is one area which has become really big in the last few years, mainly because, like I was telling you in the beginning, technology has contributed in a big way in understanding how our brain works, especially the higher functions of the brain, which we call as thinking, feeling, perceiving, judging, decision making. These are all higher functions of the brain. So how our brain works when we are in a situation where we need to use our thoughts in a certain way, or when we need to perceive certain situations, what exactly happens? So those are the answers that we are trying to find by through this particular specialization called cognitive psychology. Then we have neuropsychology. Now, cognitive psychology and neuropsychology go hand in hand, because again, as you can see, the word neuro in itself means studying the brain and the spinal cord. And here, in fact, neuropsychology as a discipline has actually become a part of a team of other experts. So somebody who studies neuropsychology or a neuropsychologist is essentially a member of a team of various different experts, like a neurologist, a biologist, a data scientist. So you have a lot of people who come together in order to understand the workings of the body and the mind. And in neuropsychology, that is exactly what we are doing. We are trying to understand, for example, if there is some kind of a damage to some parts of the brain, how that impacts the rest of the functioning of the body, and how that might then later also impact the individual's behavior. So there's a lot of development that has happened in the field of neuropsychology. In fact, a lot of assessments do happen as part of neuropsychology. There are many different tests which actually help to assess the extent of damage which has been caused to the brain and how that impacts various different bodily processes, etc. So cognitive psychologists and neuropsychologists actually, come together a lot of times to do a lot of research, also try and find ways to apply whatever they have studied, etc. So that is about neuropsychology. Then forensic psychology is another discipline which has become very popular in the last few years, especially because I'm sure we've all at some point or the other thought of the criminal mind, or also, what is it that happens to a person who suddenly, commits a crime. And also, when you talk of forensic psychology, it is not necessarily only looking at the criminal mind, but also looking at how, what kind of reforms can be brought about. So in order to reform, they also work with the justice system. So basically, a forensic psychologist is also equally involved in the justice system, if not more, in order to reform people who are also, considered to be criminals. So this has also come up in a very big way in the past few years. And they have also found a career path for themselves. So because initially, it was not considered to be a separate discipline, but now it has become a full-fledged discipline also. That was forensic psychology. Now, health psychology is another area again, which has also, which is especially in today's context, is getting a lot more significance and prominence, mainly because of the pandemic that we are encountering even now. So any such pandemic-like situation, or any situation where there is some kind of disease epidemic, in such situations, the body tends to become very weak. Now, most of the times we tend to focus on the mind and tend to ignore the body, because the body goes through the effects of what is happening in the mind. And most often we are looking at the mind. Now, in health psychology, we are doing the other way around. We are actually looking at the bodily functions. We are looking at, how to make our bodies healthy, and what are the ways in which we can create a certain community, a society which is healthy by imparting good health practices, etc. So health psychology actually, again, it's one of the team members in, say, a team of, or a group of experts who deal with health related issues is a health psychologist. Because so when you say a team of health professionals, it could be doctors of various different backgrounds, and along with them, health psychologist also becomes a part of the team, who work together to arrive at certain conclusions about how to make society better and healthier. So that is the role of a health psychologist. And one last one, very important these days, again, because sports is such a big thing today in our lives. I mean, it has always been so, but lately, I think we have also become more and more aware of the significance of playing some sport, and we are all encouraged, even in school, in our wherever we are studying, to also engage in some sporting activities, because today there is a realization of how important keeping ourselves fit is. So a sports psychologist essentially is somebody who may work with athletes, may work on individual athletes, or can even work in sports which have big teams. So you have, maybe a football team or a cricket team, which might also have sports psychologists, because their job essentially is to motivate the players to give their best. And there are different ways in which you can do that. There are strategies that they can devise in order to motivate the players to do better. So that is what the sports psychologist essentially does. So these are some of the new specializations that we have in psychology. And maybe a few years from now, we might have more. But these specializations are being offered by many universities also. And like I said, the established ones have already, they already have found a place in almost all universities which offer a psychology program. These new specializations are gradually becoming part of a lot of universities in India as well as abroad. Now, where do psychologists work? So after, if you study all these things, where exactly will you find a job? Which are the places in which you work? So there is, again, a variety of places in which you can work, starting with schools, universities, medical schools, and any other kind of educational institutions. Schools counselors work in schools, even clinical psychologists work in schools, universities also, because many universities today understand the need for having an entire counseling center, because we all know how mental health is getting seriously affected as a result of various different stressors in our lives. So right from a very young age, we seem to be going through a lot of stress. So universities and schools have their own counseling centers where trained psychologists work, clinical psychologists or counseling psychologists work. Medical schools also, because a lot of medical schools also have psychology as one of the courses which is taught to medical aspirants and aspiring doctors, because it's very important for us to also understand how the mind works. So it's also there's opportunity to also work in medical schools. There's also enough opportunity to do research along with, like I was just giving you an example of how neuropsychologists work along with other medical practitioners. So the entire the research might be actually happening in a medical school. Then there are other education institutions as well. There are institutions which look at very special needs, like special, like I was telling you, language difficulties, learning challenges. So those kinds of specialized educational institutions will also hire psychologists. Then, of course, hospitals. For example, a clinical psychologist could actually work along with a psychiatrist in order to diagnose psychological disorders, etc. So in a hospital setting, usually medical practitioners are in a hospital setting. So along with them, clinical psychologists also do work. Even an organization psychologist, for that matter, can work in the smooth running of the entire organization and ensuring that there are no stresses involved when it comes to work. So we have seen how organizational psychologists, because when you say organization can be anything. It need not necessarily be an industry or a corporate. Even a hospital is an organization for that matter. So they could even work there. Then any other healthcare centers, it need not necessarily be a hospital, but generally a small little center where you have all the experts coming together. So a psychologist would also work there. Then there are a lot of psychologists who do independent practice. And by independent practice, I mean it could be a counselor who actually has his or her own independent practice, and or a clinical psychologist may have their own independent practice. So they may not be associated with any organization, but they do their own practice. So that also is quite rampant. Consultancy, a lot of organizational psychologists actually play the role of consultants, and they do a lot of consulting assignments. And through those assignments, so they may not necessarily be employed by an organization, but through those assignments, they're essentially also trying to help those organizations resolve their conflicts. So because many organizations may not necessarily want a full-fledged psychologist, that's something that we've also seen. They might just want them to actually intervene whenever required. So that's also possible. One is that you're fully there. Another is that you are working as a consultant. So that is one. Then a psychologist can work along with the government. Like I said, in the education psychology sector, we've seen how people have also worked along with government agencies in order to formulate policies, etc. So one could work with the government, also with non-governmental organizations. There are a lot of NGOs which work in the area of mental health, and in order to make mental health, part and parcel of our good mental health practices, part and parcel of our lives, there are a lot of projects that keep happening, and NGOs do a lot of such projects which affect the larger community. Corporates, of course, organizational psychologists, industrial psychologists can also work with the corporate business houses, so that they can go ahead and be very proactive when it comes to resolving. If they find that something might go wrong, I mean, they could actually be more proactive, and instead of allowing it to go out of hand, they could actually curtail it in the beginning itself. So there are many things that they could do, not just use it as a reactive measure. They can also be very proactive. So there are many things that can be done even in a corporate setting by an organizational psychologist. So that is another area where the psychologist can work. Then, of course, there are various different research organizations where you can work, do a lot of research. There are research organizations like marketing research organizations, which collect a lot of data from the consumers, for example. Consumer behavior is another very significant discipline. in psychology. And there's a lot of consumer behavior research that happens. So if you're really keen to do research, then that is one area in which you can do research. And research actually happens across all the disciplines in psychology. So irrespective of which specialization you choose from, it's a very thriving discipline for doing research. So if you have a lot of interest in research, then psychology is one such discipline which gives you a lot of opportunities to do research. Besides, of course, doing the application side of it, where you're also getting into work and those kinds of things. So research is really big when it comes to psychology. So these are some of the places where you can work. And keeping all this in mind, I mean, I think whatever we have seen today, we are just touching the tip of the iceberg, actually. There's a lot of scope now in psychology, and in the last few years, actually, the scope has only doubled. And so there is no dearth of any career options anymore. And in fact, we can see a lot of demand for psychology today, and especially because of the current situation that we are in. It seems like people want to know more about how their entire mind and body works, and it's a profession which wants to help people. So if you're really somebody who likes to help someone and help someone in need and do something to reach out to people, this is the best profession to be in. So that is what I think I would like to end by saying that. So I'm open to taking questions now. Gautami, if you can tell me how to go about this. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think that was very well summed up. Thank you so much, Dr. Priya. That was very informative, including me, and very interesting as well. And you're absolutely right. In this day and age where, thankfully, we are more open to talking about our psychological issues and more open to being less judgmental as well. So this makes it a very relevant topic. We do have a couple of questions, and I believe we have more than 100 participants. But my sincere request is please pour in more questions in the Q&A session. I'll start with a couple of questions that have already come in. I think one question that has been repeated twice is this considered as a medical career?
No, it is not considered as a medical career, but surely it is a good option if you don't get into a medical career. Because when you say medical career, obviously you must do an MBBS. Now, that is not the degree that we are doing over here. Like, for example, what we are offering as part of our university is a BSc program in psychology. So it's a science after all. So we are offering a BSc program. You may also have a BA program, but the content more or less remains the same. So I won't consider this as a medical career. I mean, that will be wrong to say, right? That it is a medical career. However, it is a really good option. That's why we are calling our talk today also Careers Beyond Medicine, because when you say medicine, you are obviously restricting yourself to only medical practice and training yourself to be a medical professional. Whereas here, that's not the case. In fact, there's a lot more scope. You can do a lot more things. So
right. It's more diversified. Yeah, right. It's more diversified in terms of your options post your degree, is what I understand. It's more diversified in terms of.
It's more diversified. Yes, right. Yes, got it. Yes,
okay, correct. Perfect. The next question is, what is the eligibility criteria and prerequisites for becoming a psychologist?
So when you say prerequisite and eligibility criteria to become a psychologist, firstly, you have to go through the basic training. So you start with the undergraduate program. So finish your BA or BSc program. Then you finish your master's program, because these days, if you want to really do something in the field, master's program is surely essential. So a PG program is definitely required. And then subsequently, if you are further really keen to continue in the discipline, then a PhD program as well. So it depends again on your interest, because when you say PhD, then obviously you are moving into the direction of research. So if you're really keen on doing research, then a PhD program will surely help. But if you finish at the master's level, even after that, you will end up having a good career in psychology. So you don't need to do a PhD program.
Okay. And what will the eligibility criteria to enter into the field be?
You mean to say after you finish your studies?
I think this question is more in terms of what after +2, or maybe what should they take in +2?
Right. No, so in +2, it doesn't matter. 11th or 12th doesn't matter. Do you take science, commerce, arts, humanities? It doesn't matter at all. You can take any one of these and yet go into psychology. So whether you have taken any of those disciplines in 11th and 12th, you can still opt for a BA or a BSc in psychology. There is absolutely no such restriction that, you must have a science degree, the science background, only then you can come into psychology. Nothing like that.
Perfect. I think I hope your question is answered, Amit. And are there any further questions for Dr. Priya here? I think she's been very kind to answer, and she has a lot of experience. I request participants to leverage this experience and ask any last questions that you have with regard to the topic. Just one question that I had, Dr. Priya,
Yeah.
is you mentioned that in RV University you have BSc in psychology, right?
Yes.
So can you give quote some real time examples in terms of what after that? Of course, you have mentioned that they can go for a master's or a PhD after that. But if there are any jobs that they can take up, if with some real life examples, if you can just mention those, that will be helpful.
Okay, so students who finish their psychology program, whether it is, let's start with the undergraduate program first. Options after the undergraduate program may not be too many, but however, we have seen that if for example, we do offer certain internship programs as part of our course. So if they do their internships really well, then many times we have seen that the organization in which they've done their internships, they also absorb the students. They want the students to come and work with them. So it also depends on how good you are with your work in that particular internship. That is after the undergraduate program. After a postgraduate program, the options are much more. So like I was telling you just now, you could work in an organizational setting, in a school, in any educational institution, even in medical school, because the training is such that you have a far in-depth understanding of the discipline now after you've done your PG program. So there is a lot more scope to do many more things in the specialization that you have taken up. So you can actually work in any of the things that I listed there, whether it is a hospital setting or a school or a university, in the corporate. So you have many, many options like that. And we have had students who have also actually gone and joined, whether it's a hospital or a school or a corporate sector, they have gone and joined all these places.
Okay, perfect. There is one more question from Bharat. He asks, what is the importance of sports psychology?
So the sports psychologist, like I was just telling you, works along with, so he's a part of a team. So, some of these specializations actually may work along with another team of specialists. So, for example, you have a physiotherapist who's essentially looking at the exercise part of it, the fitness part of it, the physical fitness part of it. Whereas a sports psychologist is somebody who is essentially there to motivate you so that you perform better. He's also helping to strategize various different ways in which you can enhance your performance. So the sports psychologist essentially will look at what are the ways in which you can strengthen your mind. Like, for example, when you talk about the sports, especially if it's a team sport, any sport for that matter, you're there to win. And many times losing can be very, very difficult. So when you lose something, when you lose a certain, event, or if that's a solo event, or whether you're part of a team, when you lose, it's not very easy. We may just feel as, okay, fine, it's just one match that you've lost. Your life doesn't depend on that one match. Yet it is very difficult because it's a very large platform on which you are playing, and many times you feel very distressed as a result of the loss, because you have also put in equal amount of efforts, just like the team who won. So losing can be very, very dejecting. So in a situation like that, the sports psychologist can surely help, and can also contribute in a big way to motivating, so that they can also get out of that situation of this entire feeling that, okay, we are failures. So the job of a sports psychologist is to bring you out of that kind of a situation that you put yourself in. So those are ways in which a sports psychologist can handle different kinds of situations.
Great. This is a little more, bit more leading question. I think it's again from Bharat. He asks, there are so many different types. I guess he means fields. What would be a better to choose from a career perspective?
Well, that I think you are the best person to judge, because when it comes to a question like that, it depends on your interest also. So what I see, like I said, all these are specializations which are now big when it comes to psychology. So I won't say one is more significant than the other, because many specializations have come up, and the fact that even these new specializations have become very popular is because somewhere there's a lot of career options available in these new specializations as well. Of course, the established ones surely have a little more edge, only because they are established and people know about it. But even the new ones, they have, the last few years, especially the last 20-25 years, many things have changed. So it seems as if there is no dearth of options when it comes to even the new specialization. So I may not be able to exactly, be in a position to tell you that this is better or that is better. But again, it depends on your interest, because if I say something is better, and if you go into it and if you're not interested in it, then there is no point. So you must also assess your own interests before you actually finalize what your specialization should be.
Thank you. There's another question. The question is, how do you build a career as a psychologist in a private hospital setup or a corporate setup?
Whether it is a private or a corporate, what matters is your skills and your knowledge. So like, I was telling you how there are people who also do their own independent practice. Now, in that case, they're not affiliated to anything or to anyone. They're doing it all by themselves. So in that situation also, I mean, the only thing that matters is your own knowledge, your skill, and how you would like to utilize that. So even if it is a private hospital, I'm assuming that there you have a team of people whom you're working with. And there again, you definitely have a lot of opportunities, and how you make the most of those opportunities and how you use your skills is what is essential. The same applies to also corporate setting. So basically, the best would be for you to, jump into the situation and get the most of it. So that is the best thing to do, because whatever we have taught you in college or in university, of course, now has to be translated into the real life situation. So all of us have learned a lot more on the job, so we have been trained definitely. But once you start working and once you start actually applying those skills and the knowledge that you have learned in a classroom setting, that is where you realize, okay, now this is how application works. So it doesn't matter what the setting is, whether it is a private hospital or a corporate, it's the same.
Perfect. I think those are the questions that we have for today.
Okay.
It was a very intriguing session, Dr. Priya. It was definitely one of the most informative that I have informative sessions that I have sat for so far. Thank you so much for your time and your expertise. Clearly, your experience reflects in the way you've handled the questions today. Thank you so much for that. And I think the students have also, gotten a lot. We're getting a good lot of positive feedback from the students as well. Any closing notes you would like to give to the students?
Well, all I'd like to say, thank you so much, Gautami, and I also enjoyed it actually, and it was quite amazing that they had all kinds of questions. All I would like to say is that they should not in any way get dejected by, if they've not been able to get into a certain career, like for example, medicine. There are multiple options available today. There is no dearth of opportunities for the current generation of students. And I think it's just how you make the most of your own education. What you do out of it is later. But while you are still in school or in college, how do you make the most of whatever is available to you? I think that is what is most significant. And then thereafter, once you have finished your education, how you finally also remain open to learning more, and also to having a better understanding of how to apply whatever you have studied in real life situations. I think this is what is most significant. So no matter what your specialization will be in psychology, for example, all you need to do is be more receptive to whatever is happening around you, and apply whatever you have learned, and also keep learning more and more. So that is all I'd like to say.
Great. I think the learning and the key takeaway from this is be open to learning and
Yes.
be more receptive to whatever comes your way. Opportunities are a lot, and there will be a lot more opportunities created in this field for sure. given that people are becoming more and more open to receiving critical feedback and learning about themselves. So that was a wonderful session, Dr. Priya. I think this has been one of the very different session that I've handled so far. Thank you so much for your time once again, and thanks to all the participants. I hope you had a wonderful time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Bye.